We are sitting down for another episode, this one with Sean Fedorko, co-founder of Radius Co-work. If you don't know what that is, it is a co-working space in the heart of Erie that facilitates a space, 10,000 square feet to be exact, that allows other entrepreneurs to come together, to collaborate, and have a community in a culture that helps you grow your business to where you haven't done before. It is amazing what businesses can do when they learn how to collaborate, but I feel like that's a word that can be very muddled and confused. So who better than having Sean Fedorko, who has collaborated with so many people and knows how to collaborate, to explain that to us. And that's kind of the theme of the day, is how to collaborate, the art of that. So here we go. We're going to jump right into the story of Sean, how he got started. So please listen to the whole thing, because again, great content. Also, if you are listening to this podcast and you're one of the many who are subscribed, it would mean so much if you just went down into wherever you're listening to this and write a review. Having the reviews on this podcast is a great way for me to measure how we're doing, and we won't know that unless you help us out. So thank you for listening, but also thank you to all who comment. Hey, Sean, how's it going today?
It's going great, Lewis. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for coming in, sitting down with me today and doing the podcast. For the people listening who don't know who Sean is, tell us a little bit about who you were. We're not going to go early into your history yet. Just talk about what you do now, who you are now.
Sure. I run Radius Co-work, Erie's co-working community. The function of a co-working space is largely to be a home for freelancers, remote workers, or small businesses. And so those people who do come and work with us, I largely help. Mostly that's making introductions between each other. And so I spend a lot of my time out about in the city, learning what's going on, what resources are available, who's doing what, who would like to meet whom, and then making as many introductions and exchanging as much information as I think will be helpful to people.
So how long have you been running and working at Radius?
Well, we'll be open 5 years as of May 1st, but really began working on the project about 5.5 years ago.
Okay. And I know in your history you traveled a little bit. You weren't always in Erie. What brought you to Erie? When did it start when you got back to Erie, the whole co-working idea? Walk through like your earlier years before coming to Erie again.
Sure, yeah. So I had grown up in Erie, and I left, like many people do, for school and for work, and completed grad school in Bloomington, Indiana, went on to Washington, D.C., where I had really planned on, starting and establishing my career in the policy world, technology policy. And hadn't taken a full-time position, but saw a 6-month contract here in the city of Erie with the Technology Council, figuring out whether that nonprofit had a future. And I thought, oh, cool, this is a chance to come back home, visit friends, family, get the rest of my stuff out of my parents' basement, then I'll leave and, never come back again. Only it turned out that when I got here, I found a city that had really kind of hit rock bottom, but had potential for almost anything imaginable. And a ton of other people like me saw that potential and were starting things. And it just so happened that I wanted to work in a co-working space because I worked in a co-working space in D.C. and assumed they would be everywhere. Nobody here seemed to know what they were except for the guy who eventually became my co-founder, Bill Scholes. And so we thought, well, we're two dumb academics. Nobody else even knows what this thing is. Surely we could figure this out before somebody beats us to it. And we started the business.
And that kind of seems like a lot of things that are happening more recently in Erie, or people are like, I want this. They don't see it in Erie, and then they try to start it, which is cool to see these new things coming, but it's also very difficult to navigate, one, getting the word out, getting people educated on even what a co-working space is. Did you find the process of starting Radius challenging, or did people kind of catch on to the idea quickly? And
oh, no, it's extraordinarily challenging. Even our name, Radius Co-work, it's kind of like saying, Q abides hamburgers, right? You're just putting the name like right in the establishment of the business. Other co-working spaces are named like Canvas or Affinity Labs or the Candy Factory or Indie Hall. They don't say like co-work right in them.
Yeah.
And we did that intentionally because we knew we were going to have to educate the entire audience. And it took years. It's really not until about 6 months ago that enough of the community knew about Radius, and the community within Radius had grown large enough to get the word out, that we really didn't have to constantly be storytelling, advertising, explaining what we
Yeah.
do. The first few years, I mean, it was funny. People come in for a tour. Nobody knew what we were doing. You rent desks. I don't get it, you know? We would set desks up to make it look like people were working because there wasn't anybody there. There were fake cups of coffee, kind of half full. Like, this is, what will happen as soon as you join. But, it's like I tell a lot of people, and this is really true for business, it's all story until it's not, right? So, the example I use is you're going to have a great party. You want to throw the best party in the world, right? So you invite, you got a list of people you're going to invite. You invite your first friend. You say it's going to be huge. It's going to be a blowout. Well, at that point, it's not. Like, there's literally only one person you've invited. Yeah. There's no party at all. Then you invite a second, you invite a third, and until you've got 100, 150 people invited and like confirmed that they're going to attend, it's actually not a party. But then suddenly the day comes and it's a party. And so, it takes a really long time of telling that story.
Now, the name Radius itself, how did that come about?
We're in the center of the city. Okay. We made a really intentional decision. We could have located out in Mill Creek where, easier access, wealthier community, more remote workers, maybe some easier access to space. But we would have been really disconnected from the community itself, from the heart of the city. And I enjoyed walking around in downtown DC and Baltimore, and I've spent time in Seattle and Boston and Philly. I love those cities. I love that walkable environment where I'm connected. And so we decided, well, if we actually want to build businesses in Erie, and when I say we, I mean all the original founding members, all the people who decided they did want to come together into a co-working space. We said, well, if we're going to build our businesses in Erie, we want Erie to be awesome. But Erie's not going to get awesome unless we show up and make it awesome. So we've got to show up to the downtown, be in the center of everything. So from Radius, in the Renaissance Center, tallest building in the city, in the center of the downtown, you go out in any direction along a radius, and you're accessing the rest of Erie.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. No, but it's cool to see the intentional. If we want a walkable city, a cool city, we've got to be there first and to make those moves. And Radius really seems to was one of the first movers to get that going, because now you start seeing businesses popping up all over the place and it growing. Now for you, outside of like working with Radius, like obviously you do a lot of things. Like you said, you're being in the community, staying connected. What other roles do you play outside of Radius, or is Radius the main thing for you right now?
Radius is absolutely my main thing. I mean, It's my identity. It's my work. It's my mission, my passion project. But I do a lot else. I occasionally adjunct at Mercyhurst in the political science department. Right now, I'm working on a pretty cool project with Erie Insurance over the next 9 months, an internal project for employees at their company. I work with WorkBot Studios part-time, kind of a fractional business development director for the company. They're a huge growing company in Erie. But I also am the director for Startup Grind in the city. And I am on the Erie Regional Chamber and Growth Partnerships, Government Affairs and Policy Committee. So there's quite a bit I bounce around and do.
Yeah, you've got a full plate, definitely. But what made Radius become such a big factor in your life that you just put away with what you had done, your previous career path, to go full force, 2 feet right into Radius?
Yeah, because really I'm an academic. I mean, my background was political theory and public policy. I was going to teach. That had been the plan. But, even when I began Radius, that was still the plan. It was supposed to be a 6-month project. This is going to be this cool little side thing I did, and then it would stand on its own, and I'd go do, something else. And it was really, every time you'd talk to me, I would say, oh, we're 6 months away from being done. And then the next day you'd talk to me and I'd say 6 months. And the next day I'd say 6 months. And then after about 2 years, I realized, oh, no, wait, I do this now. But why did I stick with it? Well, because I gained such a sense of efficacy. My work is not only enjoyable, challenging, frustrating often, but is enjoyable. And it's immensely purposeful. I have, through Radius, helped or been there to participate in businesses getting started in this city, remote workers staying rather than leaving, freelancers finding profit, success, and growth in their career, students coming out of university who have the opportunity to stay and work with one of these new growing businesses rather than leave. And we've transformed 10,000 square feet of what was really empty space into a 24/7 vibrant community of people sharing and exchanging ideas. getting up every day to do that is just really exciting.
So seeing that process of being a part of the community has really just sold you on this idea of running with Radius. Now, Radius definitely is kind of like a household name now, and like everybody in the business community, Radius. Oh, are you a part of Radius? Oh, I'm going to Radius. But for the people who maybe don't know who it is yet, because I was just talking to someone the other day, and they were like, I don't get the point of why would you pay to go work somewhere? I can work at my kitchen table. Like, what is the story of Radius to someone who may not understand the benefits of co-working?
Yeah, it's a great point. A lot of people aren't sure. What we explain to people is we run a space. So what is Radius? Well, there's a physical location, and it's available. It's staffed. It has commercial grade 300 symmetrical fiber. It has print services, conference rooms. It's got a cafe, classroom. Sure, it has all this space that you can work in. But space is not really the objective. We're not solving a real estate problem. Real estate's everywhere. You're right. Kitchen table or rent a space on your own. We're solving a loneliness problem. Sitting at your kitchen table, nobody's walking up to you and offering to involve you in a contract. When you're frustrated on a problem, nobody's looking over your shoulder and saying, oh, actually, what you want to do is this. You might spend 4 hours beating your head against the table on a problem. You could have spent 4 minutes turning left and asking the person next to you at the co-working space how they solved it. When you win a contract, there's nobody there to celebrate with you. At the end of the day, there's nobody to go grab a beer with. When you lose a contract and you're thinking, you know what, maybe this isn't for me, maybe this business isn't working, you're on the verge of giving up because you're in that valley of death that a lot of people hit in 6 months or within a year. Well, at Radius, there are people commiserate with. It's like, no, I've been there. Let's go talk through. What's your sales pitch like? How are we going to fix this? When you're working on a project for a client and you want some feedback, do you think this design is right? Do you think this pitch is right for so-and-so? Or, hey, how did you apply for that grant? I think I should pursue that grant. When you're sitting alone at home, nobody's going to help you with any of this. And so, it's not just about a place to work. Yeah, there are lots of places to work. The library is fantastic. Maybe you got a great home office. But who are you going to work with? Who is your people? If you like talking to peers, learning, sharing what you know, contributing to a healthy conversation, if you like being inspired and getting solutions from others, joining in contracts, yeah, you might want to join a co-working space.
Yeah, and I definitely see the benefit of having those people around you. But for someone who might be like, well, I can work from home and I have social media to connect with people. If I have a problem, I'll email somebody. Do you see a difference with having that personal connection compared to just doing everything from your computer and connecting, or do you think it's one and the same?
No. I think that there's a huge diversity in how people find that they build healthy connections for themselves. Some of our members are members and they only connect through our Slack. So, of course, there's the physical space, but all of our members are connected 24/7 via Slack. And we have a bunch of members who never physically come to the space, but they chat in Slack because that's the social media connection they're looking for. But who are their people? If they didn't have a robust group within their maybe remote business that they talk to all the time, their distributed business, or maybe they, have a bunch of peers online that they connect with, great. The only thing we're really trying to help are, people who don't have that and they want it. So, it could be that you come in every single day, 7 days a week until you're really up and running. It could be that you come in once every 2 months for a potluck. It's really up to you. We don't think everybody needs to join, of course.
Yeah.
But for those who are lonely, it's a great place. And I've known people who worked for years alone at home until one day they just cracked and they couldn't. They had spent 5 days alone with their dog, and they're like, "I'm going crazy. I'm a crazy person." They call and they come join the cohort, and then they come there every day. So that's really up to them.
Yeah, it seems like the two keys to the co-working space is the community and the collaboration between all the people that are members. The topic of this podcast is like the art of collaboration. What does that mean? Because I find myself all the time on Instagram messaging people like, hey, we should definitely collaborate on something. But I feel like, especially like in the fashion world, the term business casual has become so broad and so easy for people to inject their own meaning. I feel like the word collaboration has become close to the same. Like, what does collaboration mean? So from your point of view, how would you define collaboration?
Yeah, collaboration isn't just doing things together, right?
Yeah.
It's really about tackling some shared objective that would be much more difficult to accomplish alone. And the example we use in the co-working space, because people will ask sometimes when they join, they're like, well, don't other people do some of these people do the same thing? Aren't they competitors?
Yeah.
Or do some of these people do what I do? Am I going to be around my competitors? We always try to explain, like, hey, man, it seems like it's a huge waste of energy for a few people to fight over the same slice of pie.
Mm-hmm.
We'd rather all work together and grow the size of the pie. And we've seen that within Radius. So when I think about collaboration, I think about what are we able to accomplish together that we couldn't accomplish alone? Is it, at the end of the day, going to make us all much better off than we could accomplish if we didn't come together? Good examples of that are, we've seen some of our companies who individually, several of them, none of them could have tackled a huge project. But 3 or 4 of them who provide nearly identical services will come together and pitch a huge project that they could only accomplish with enough staff and tech and time together.
Yeah.
Well, that means that Erie gets to go after some big contract in Cleveland. And that money comes here, and that work comes here, and that reputation comes here. So by putting people together in a room, whether they're in the same business or adjacent businesses, which allows them to integrate vertically and go after a larger contract, by putting them in the same room, Erie's much more competitive.
Gotcha. So it's because a lot of the times businesses can be hindered from their ability to take on bigger jobs and be able to bring a better income. So it's almost like hiring employees of different businesses to kind of come together, create one big, massive hub to go out and compete against bigger markets, take in bigger jobs, bring it into Erie, which is all great. What do you think are some key components to finding a good collaboration? Because like when I think of it is because obviously I can join in with somebody on a big project that do similar jobs, but that person can always be the wrong person to be working with. You know what I mean? Are there any key identifiers to finding a good person to collaborate with, or different ways to, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is how do you define what a good collaboration is?
I mean, a big part of it is if they're funny. Like, I know that seems silly, right? But think of it.
If they're funny.
Yeah. If people are funny, if you enjoy each other,
Mm-hmm.
like if you can establish a great rapport and trust, you like talking together, you think their work is cool. Like, the reason people start businesses and the reason people are typically at a co-working space is because they've chosen their own line of work, right? They're not part of a larger corporate entity. They're typically on their own, doing something that they're passionate about. Well, find out the people you like doing that work with.
Yeah.
That's a huge first litmus test, because you have to be able to trust these people, and if we enjoy working together, if we genuinely respect and appreciate each other's work, it's a lot easier to establish trust. And then you have to have sort of a clear understanding of who's doing what and why and what's the compensation, right? So when we work alone or we work on our small team, we don't have perfect vision into how other people coordinate working alone in their small team.
Yes.
And so, the second part of a collaboration, once we know that we trust each other, we like each other, this is going to be fun, is, okay, well, exactly like, how is this going to work? Let's have this in writing, let's agree, what is this process going to look like? And how are we going to overcome any questions, conflicts, challenges, so that when that happens, instead of sort of breaking up the collaboration, we're able to maintain trust, maintain accountability. We know already who's going to be responsible for what and why. And then the next is go after big opportunities. Make sure that what you're pursuing through that collaboration is worthwhile. It's going to be worth the time and effort to maintain it. And honestly, it's very empowering to go from being 1 or 2 people to being 5 or 6 all going after something together. I've got a pitch later this week actually with another business that through Workbot we're collaborating with, because we pitched a contract together. It's like, cool, you know what? We're kind of busy, you're kind of busy, but we'd both like half of this.
Now, obviously, there's a bit, like you were saying, make sure they're funny. So there's a big value of finding someone with the right essence of a collaboration, someone you can really connect with. Because if that doesn't work, obviously this isn't going to work with that person. But there's also the function of it, which is, hey, what am I going to be doing? What are you going to be doing? How are we going to split this? How do you go about that in the most professional way? Do you find a person to write a contract for you? Do you get a lawyer involved? Or is it just more of an internal thing you work out with the other people you're collaborating with?
Yeah, no, it's usually a little bit of an internal thing.
Okay.
But with a lot of work, it's part of how you're pitching your business, your client that you're trying to win. So if you're sending a proposal and 2 or 3 businesses are going in on it together, And you're probably going to be upfront about that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to say who has what responsibility for which portion of the contract, especially if there's a vertical integration, right? So if you specialize in X and I specialize in Y, our proposal is probably going to say Lewis is going to do X and Sean is going to do Y. And that really holds us accountable. Then it's about setting a timeline. But, if people didn't trust each other well enough to go into a collaboration without some like third party litigation, and I'm talking about small businesses here. Obviously, if we're a couple large corporations, we're going to get our legal team involved. But if I'm a little photography business and a design business, maybe a web or animation business, videographers, photographers, if these people are coming together, it's really pretty simple. There's got to be trust, and what's so great is we build this trust through time, right? So the first time we're going to maybe be a little bit more formal about it. But by the 10th time we're working together on projects, we've got a rhythm. That's what you really want to find.
Gotcha.
So the long-term goal of collaboration is to get more efficient and better at it, right?
Yeah.
Come together more frequently. Go after big things more frequently. And that's one of the things I appreciate about a co-working space is, we might not work on anything together. But over the course of 6 months or a year, I see your work style. I know what you do. I know how you do it. I know who your clients are. And so when an opportunity comes together for us to collaborate, we've already established a deep rapport and trust.
Yeah, because not only do you learn on like a social media side, oh, this guy puts out good work. This is a good way. He presents it well, but when you're in a co-working space, that's true. You get to see how they go about their work. Maybe you just can't stand how he is working at his desk and leaves everything a mess, and that's not the type of person you work with. So having that co-working space does leave another layer of validating who you want to work with, which is huge. So we have collaboration and we have community. You, as one of the co-founders and running Radius, what are some tips on growing a solid community, whether you're in a co-working space or if you're just a small business that has a few employees? Because community is so important with growing your business and making sure everyone's on the right page.
Yeah, well, I draw a distinction between culture and a community. A community or a group of people, but the culture defines kind of how they interact. So especially when you're a small business, defining that culture is going to be really important. And being part of a larger community that already has an established culture helps a lot. So some of the businesses within Radius have said, what they particularly appreciated was when they went from one guy, the founder, to, the first and second and third employee by being part of a co-working community that had a healthy culture of communication, of contribution, of curiosity, of, even just fun. By having that healthy culture within a large community, we were able to establish it within the small business, because now the rhythms of the workplace are being imposed by all these other people that aren't even part of your business, but they communicate subtly what is and isn't appropriate, what doesn't work, even just sort of that encouraging attitude of seeing others working hard rather than, being closed off in a tiny office with just you. Maybe you're like a new graduate and this 35-year-old guy who's just hired you, and you sort of sit there in silence typing for most of the day, right? Awkward, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important, to establish that. And again, it's a lot of iteration. What is the pattern? Do we, greet each other in the morning and ask how the weekends went? Well, that's a, great casual office banter, right? Are there potlucks? So at a co-working space, maybe they go out to lunches. Maybe they host potlucks. Maybe they have evening events. Is it common and customary and comfortable for these kind of new employees being integrated or new co-working members being integrated to find one of these avenues where they meet their peers and they are able to express themselves and learn who other people are?
What would you say, if you could define what Radius's culture is, what would you say that is?
It's a great question. I guess I would define it as openness.
Okay.
Unpredictable, and funny.
Funny.
I mean, half the people there are just looking for reasons to crack jokes half the day. But it's open. I mean, anybody shows up. I remember, a young engineer just joined, and she actually just moved to Erie to work with one of our companies. She moved here from Ithaca, New York. And she joined, and the same day she joined, somebody posted in our Slack channel, hey, we're doing a board game lunch. Anybody want to come up? She said, oh, I want to come, and she jumped into the board gaming lunch, within an hour of having joined. I had no idea there was going to be a board game lunch that day. Didn't know she was going to join that day. But, she showed up and be like, oh, you're a Radius member. Of course, yeah, sit down and let's play board games together. This is what we're all here for.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that all the people that show up, they've self-selected into a group of people who have also self-selected into a group saying, first and foremost, I want to be around others.
Yeah, and that's important because you only get what you put into it. Because like you said, you can join and only come to a potluck once every 2 months, or you can be in there connecting and always trying to grow these relationships throughout your entire time, like as much as you can.
Sure, and people have different levels of need.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as co-working goes, I've always thought that, and just business in general, so co-working from the business side of things, I always thought that competition is one of the greatest things a business can have because it causes you to be more creative and more inventive, if that's even a word. But you have to keep pushing yourself to the edge so that you can always be putting yourself out of business. Do you think that's the same for co-working? Like, do you think that there's room in Erie for more co-working, or does Radius seem to be want to be branching out soon, or what's kind of like the future of that?
Yeah, competition, as you've described it, that's kind of antagonistic, right? So it perceives growth and change and development as a function of outdoing somebody else, growing at their expense. Otherwise, they're growing at your expense. And that's, to the heart of our subject today, collaboration. That's the antithesis of what collaboration would say. Collaboration would say, I would like to teach you to be better, and I'd like you to teach me to be better, and I'd like us both to continue growing, right?
Yeah.
So, co-working spaces, when multiple co-working spaces open, they typically assist and facilitate one another. There are, in the city of Erie, 97,000 people, almost 100,000 in the greater, MSA. There are 230,000 people. Like, another space can open up. And in fact, we've helped a couple who have been much more specialized. So Thrive Therapy Space, opened by Penny Porter, is focused almost exclusively on, therapy professionals who have very specific and unique needs. So our space doesn't work. It's not like HIPAA compliant, right? Like it's not a great place for therapy. We can't, if you come to Radius for couples therapy, right? You're parading in front of a room of like 30 people to go into the conference room for your conversation. We're looking up, we're like, oh God, good luck, Steve. Ooh, Angela. Oh, yeah. Comes out crying. You're like, I guess it didn't go well, right? So obviously it's not a great space for therapists. Yeah. They've built their own co-working space for their peers because most therapists do work alone in isolation. Bill Kern has built The Bastion. The Bastion is a co-working space for musicians, oil painters, metal workers, woodworkers, clay workers, like people who actually make art loud, late into the night, heavy, big. They also need a gallery. So he's got a gallery where he'll show your art. So, those are different takes on co-working, and we've helped them get started. Could another co-working space open that was kind of similar to Radius, serving the same demographic? I think it would be challenging at this point, in the heart of Erie, because it's, we're really even seeing how long it takes to get new people in Erie kind of into the space. Maybe out in Northeast, maybe out in Fairview. Maybe there's a large remote work community who prefer to stay in the suburbs and not come into the city. And if they do get started, it's just teaching more people in our broader community of Erie how to come together and solve problems together.
Yeah. So it almost seems like not only do you think it could work, but you almost welcome it because of the collaboration you can have with someone like that.
Oh, yeah. And people have come to Radius, and I've referred them to the Bastion. And people have called up Thrive, and Penny's referred them to Our Way. It's really about helping people.
Yeah. You all grow as a collective. It's not like there's only so much we can get. Like, it's not just like a pie where you can only take a certain slice. Yeah. There is so much, especially in Erie, where we haven't reached like a peak of our potential, like a bigger city might be. Like, if you're down in Pittsburgh or you're in LA and there's a co-working space on this corner and on the other corner, there's more of a competition there. But in Erie, there's so much more room for people to play that you don't really have to worry about competition too much at this point, I don't feel like.
No, not really. And anybody who did want to get started in Erie in any business,
Yeah.
the best thing I can advise is go talk to the people already doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Ask them, hey, I've got this idea for a brewery. Do you think Erie can sustain another brewery? Or, I've got an idea for a videography company. I want to start a web company. Hey, I actually want to start a contract engineering firm. Do you think there's enough demand with all the manufacturing in Erie? Talk to the people who are already doing it. Chances are they're going to have some business to refer your way, right?
Yeah.
Chances are they're going to be able to tell you, wow, watch out for these traps that I almost fell into.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what you'd like to do.
Now, as far as just general business in Erie, Pennsylvania, what are some things that you are excited about coming up that is going to be really good for entrepreneurs in the city of Erie specifically?
Yeah, the last 5 years have really seen a radical shift in the entire economic development community, also in the entrepreneurial community, towards much more cooperation, collaboration, but also resource provision. Radius is a business that provides resources to other businesses.
Yes.
So I'm getting excited for, the city's a good example. They've got the flagship fund, which is just a $5,000 grant given to a business. It takes like 30 minutes to apply, but up to $5,000 given to a small business to help accelerate their growth a little bit. Little things like that are meaningful for helping people get started. Then they've got the Commodore grant, which is up to $25,000, which is another grant to help accelerate you once you've gotten a little bit bigger, once you're employing so and so many people. Ben Franklin Technology Partners for Central and Northern Pennsylvania has gone from investing in like 2, 3, 4 businesses a year to like 16. The level of investment and activity we're seeing in these institutions is really incredible. The Erie Regional Chamber has just completed its Erie Forward initiative, which is designed to raise $1 million a year for 5 years, specifically to invest in business attraction, business facilitation and growth, and new business development. That's only one part of the project. Then we see, the Erie Downtown Development Corporation saying, okay, well, we're going to tackle space. There is no Class A office space available in the city of Erie, but it's being built.
Yeah.
So we're getting that part of the equation ready for somebody to step into. So, what I'm excited about in the city of Erie for businesses is everyone from nonprofits to the government to for-profit businesses are stepping up and saying, how can we fill a niche in this entrepreneurial ecosystem so that the ecosystem is more robust, more diverse, healthier, stronger against shock, but also full of more opportunity for new niches? I feel pretty good about it.
Now, on the flip side of that coin, what are some things with starting Radius that you have found to be hurdles you've had to overcome that you wish you would have known about, whether it be the market of consumers in Erie that you didn't know because Erie is kind of a different place, or just the city itself that you had to overcome, if that makes sense?
Yeah. One of the challenges in Erie is sometimes finding people with very specific expertise.
Oh, okay.
So if you told me tomorrow that you needed to hire somebody who is an expert in building MailChimp campaigns and had, built 20 campaigns over the last 2 years, that person's not in Erie.
No.
When we got started, we wanted to set everything up using Stripe subscription models. We couldn't find anybody who had built robust Stripe subscriptions and integrations with their website. So we're like cobbling it together, Googling, because we literally couldn't find anybody who knew.
Wow.
So one of the things I think Erie is challenged by is that we'd like to leverage particular tools, particular talents, find particular people to hire. And we are still a smaller city. We don't have 2.5 million people where there'd be a lot more likelihood of a lot more specialization.
Yes.
So that's one of the things that I know we found really challenging, was sometimes trying to solve a problem but not being able to locate anybody who had already solved it to help us learn how.
Now, do you feel like Erie might also be too small for people to be specialized in something like that? Because if I go around saying I'm proficient in MailChimp strategy advertising, maybe someone doesn't need, you know what I mean? Like your market isn't as broad in Erie for a specific need like that. Do you see that? Or do you think that's just a fear someone like myself could just get in their head?
Yeah, honestly, I think people get that in their head.
Mm.
You know, the world's huge.
Yeah.
You know, if you're starting a business, you know, the worst thing you can do is be in a service. You know, they're 1,000 times easier to start service businesses, but they're not nearly as fragile or they're not nearly as robust or as profitable as product-based businesses.
Yeah.
You know, B2C businesses are not nearly as robust and profitable as B2B businesses, right? So, well, if you're in Erie and you are able to serve a business client with a great product, great, you got to find a way to ship it around the world.
Yeah.
Like, you know, most of the people in the coworking space, I mean, they do maybe half, maybe some of their business in Erie, but most of our remote workers, in fact, all of our remote workers work for businesses outside of Erie.
Mm.
We've got a 3-person staff for one of the companies who's headquartered in New York City, but they've got 3 people working in Erie. None of them work with Erie clients. You know, the clients are around the world. So I think finding or developing the skills to communicate with remote clients, work in remote markets, but leverage the advantages of living in such a helpful, well-resourced, kind of low-cost community to get started is actually an advantage.
Yeah, for sure. No, I just wanted to ask that because I see myself falling into the mindset of, oh, I have to keep it local. I can't grow local. But it is getting out of the box and saying, hey, well, Erie has Cleveland, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh. If you did have an in-person service business that you can get to pretty easily.
And Chicago, Detroit, and Charlotte, which have daily commuter flights from our airport. So
true.
I measure our market as where could I get to any day I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Any day I want to, I can get down to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or Buffalo by car, sure. But any day I want to, I can get a plane ticket to Detroit, Charlotte, and Chicago.
That's true. Yeah, because the airport is open to those direct flights out. Actually, I just flew in from Chicago from one of the commuter flights. But that's a good point. What are some things specifically that you recall starting Radius that were like landmarks in growing Radius that you that stick in your mind?
Well, the one I'm always excited about is literally the first day, the first minute we opened the doors. This guy comes walking in, Matt Silva, first member ever joined, got 2 monitors under his hands. He's like, great, there's a co-working space open. I've been waiting. I was like, oh God, first minute we opened the doors, this guy came walking in, can I get you a cup of coffee, sir? It was just so exciting. But, you know, other milestones were, we initially started, you know, we had 2,000 square feet. There were 12 people who kind of said like, yeah, we'd like to work together. This will be fun. We went out, got coffee. We worked together in the evenings. We went to dinner, like had conversations. We knew we wanted to be together as a group. And we thought, man, if this got to 25, that'd be really cool. Well, eventually we got more than 25. And so, wow, okay, we'll get another conference room, a little classroom, maybe some call rooms because we're bumping into each other. And so we expanded and we thought, okay, you know, that's it. The second year we expanded and added the south side of the hall. And we thought, okay, that's good. You know, that's what we'll be now. But then by the end of the next year, we're like, nope, we're bursting at the seams. Let's get the whole east end of this hallway. And we built team rooms for small teams who were growing, 3 or 4 people. We built a library for people who wanted to work in silence. We built a lounge. You know, for the first time, we had space that was something other than desks where we could sit and talk. And we built private offices. We even built our tool room because we do all the renovations, construction, work, design ourselves. And we're like, great, okay, that's it. You know, we're going to run this now. And over the course, we had hired our first community organizer, somebody who would be there full time with me, helping to run things day in and day out. And then, of course, we got full again. So as of last year, we took the whole hallway. Now we're finishing what we're calling the West Wing, adding our own podcasting studio, more team offices, private offices, flexible workspace. And so I think the big milestones have been every time we had to double our space because we had doubled our membership. And then when we went, you know, from just kind of me there every day and Bill at the time, to having a full-time community organizer, and now we have 2 community organizers. Because we've expanded our hours as our membership grew. Yeah, so those like doubling moments have been really exciting because I can't control how many people need a co-working space in Erie. Not
No.
really. But if we run it right, and if people in Erie are doing well, and if Erie is doing well, then they'll keep showing up. And they've just kept showing up, which has been an incredible barometer for the health of the city of Erie. Because 10 years ago, you probably couldn't have started a co-working
No.
space. 5 years ago, we were kind of optimistic, weren't sure. We thought maybe 20 people would show up. But what's happened in Erie in the last 5 years has seen the co-working community go from 12 to 150. It's extraordinary.
Wow. No, that's a huge gap. Now, if people who don't know about Radius, you guys own the entire you guys are covering the entire floor that you're on in the building, correct?
Yeah, it's 10,000 square feet that we rent in the Renaissance Center. Yeah, I mean, it's...
So what's next if you double again? Do you go up? Do you go down? Do you go to a remote location? Have you guys thought of that?
It's a big building. There are a lot of opportunities. So, we think we're pretty overbuilt right now.
Yeah.
We've got more space than we strictly need. And that was because largely after 4 straight years of nonstop renovations, I'm tired of it. I like to get rid of these paint cans once and for all, like just dust my hands and say, that's it, I'm just going to enjoy it now. So we're trying to, finish the renovations pretty quickly, but we'll have more space than we need for a while. But we have all kinds of ideas, Maybe there should be a cafe in the lobby of the building, and maybe Radius would run it, right? And that would be the way that we welcome people. We're already known for our coffee. Maybe we welcome people in, and those who are just trying to get out of their homes, they come into the cafe 3 or 4 times. We say, we have a co-working space. If you're lonely and you're trying to get out of your house, you don't just have this cafe you could come to. You could actually work with people upstairs. I've got all kinds of crazy ideas like Radius Gear, where we'd open up a mechanic's garage, right? So the people who they want a shared space to work on their vehicles, their motorcycles, their cars, whatever, small engine equipment, all kinds of cool ideas. It'll largely depend on where our members want to go. What do they want? What do they ask for? We're here to facilitate them.
Yeah, because you as a co-working space could open up in almost any industry. And actually, it's funny you say the mechanic garage, because I've been looking for something like that forever, because I do all the work on my own cars, but it's always usually out in the driveway.
Yeah.
So if it's raining, I'm getting wet. If it's snowing, I'm freezing. So it's like there are so many options.
Well, and how many times have you Googled to find a solution,
Yeah.
Like, where is the O2 sensor on this? Wouldn't it be great if you could just turn around and ask somebody who is also working on their vehicle?
Oh, that would be, because for the longest time, it was me and my dad who would always work on things, but he's in Pittsburgh, I'm in Erie. So it's usually like, hey, Dad, how do I replace the oil? Where do I find the oil filter? And he's like, okay, well, in that car, it's going to be, so if you did have a space like that, and the opportunities are endless for any industry.
And that's what we're good at. We're not good at fixing cars. We're not good at, designing websites necessarily, like, as a co-working space. We're good at helping people come together and they can help each other solve problems.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we're good at.
You as one of the co-founders, you're not supposed to know it all about every business, every industry where people can come to you. But when you build it to 120, 150?
150 people, yeah.
You have enough people in there.
I know who knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't have to solve the problem. I just have to make an introduction. And then when these two people solve their problems or help each other, and we've got people who form trivia teams. It can be as simple as like, my problem is I want to go to trivia, but I don't have a team, right?
Yeah.
It could be a problem like that, but it could be changing my oil, or it could be, figuring out how to host a server.
Yeah. Well, the whole coffee idea sounded like if you had a Starbucks that everybody works at anyways, but it was Radius Bucks.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, and then just go up
We'll
there.
work on that branding.
Yeah, we'll work on that. I mean, don't put me in charge of that. But no, that's really cool to see that you guys are so ready for creative, the next steps, which is awesome. As far as the structure of pricing, we just did a interview with Jen talking about knowing what you're worth. How has that changed, determining what Radius is worth as a membership?
Yeah. So one of the important things to understand is, businesses have different purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So Radius is largely a social enterprise. The purpose of Radius is not to maximize the amount of money I can make.
Yeah.
The purpose of Radius is to lower the barrier of entry for freelancers, small businesses, and remote workers who want to get started and stay in Erie.
Mm-hmm.
And so we keep our membership rates as low as we can sustain.
Yeah.
So that as many people can participate. And for $100 a month, you get 24/7, 365 access to a 10,000 square foot, catered, cleaned, commercially supplied co-working space full of not only everything you need as a facility, but everyone you need as a knowledge resource. So that barrier is pretty low. But we have members who are just what we call nomads. Yeah, they come and go. They stop in twice a month, but they're connected, every day through Slack and can attend all our events for free. Right now, it's only $25 a month. But we've got people who, come in once a week. We call them casual members. Maybe they come in every Friday to do their bookkeeping. Photographers, yoga instructors, people who largely work outside the space but occasionally need an office. That's $50 a month, and you can come in every Friday, every week, once a day. And then we've got flex members. They work anywhere in the space. They're flexible. They can drop in at any seat. It's $100 a month, but it's 24/7, 365 unlimited access. And we've got dedicated members who get their own dedicated desk. They, set up their monitors and their equipment, whatever, because they leave all their stuff there. $200 a month.
Hey, you almost like for what you're getting. Obviously, if you're a business that doesn't have any income right now, obviously it might be too much. But if you're a business that's going right now and you need that,
oh yeah,
you almost can't beat
And
it.
to break it out, if you get parking too, so we can get you a parking pass through your membership in the garage next door. That's a 24/7 garage you get access to downtown. But let's say you have a dedicated desk and a parking pass. It's $250 a month. If you only come in Monday through Friday every week, it works out to $12 and I think 30 cents a day. $12.30 a day to run a business in a 10,000 square foot space with a 9th story view of the entire city. So the question we ask people is, if you are starting a business and you can't afford $100 a month, but you're kind of intending to go full time, making just a 1 month commitment, maybe we should re-examine whether this is the right business to start, because it seems like $100 to take care of every facility and operating location expense, internet, coffee, meeting rooms, everything. That should probably be achievable. We hope.
Yeah. And at $12 a day, how much do you spend on your coffee at Starbucks to get a free table to work at Starbucks?
Right, exactly.
You're almost breaking even.
And if somebody just wants to drop in, they don't really want to join, but they want to check it out, we've got a day pass. It's $15. Drop by, as much coffee as you want, donuts if they're on the table, and they usually are.
So some kind of last minute things that I just want to cover. One for you is, what are some things what do I want to ask first? What would you say is your biggest failure? Well, your favorite failure is what I like to ask every guest. This is kind of pivoting a little bit. And to lay out what I mean by your favorite failure is, in Erie, I think that there's a big thing, and I kind of talked about it on my first podcast, with people looking at failure the wrong way. So I like to ask people their favorite failure as in terms of something you thought was wrong that either ended up teaching you something very valuable in the end, or something that turned out not to be a failure because you just looked at it the wrong way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, wow. My favorite failure. I think a lot of the times we sort of realize that our decision wasn't right objectively, with hindsight. But at the time, we couldn't have made any other, right? Because it seemed so right, and probably maybe even was. It's only luck that proved you wrong in some cases. But the mistake I see a lot of people make, and I think I made, was not investing more in the business earlier. And that's a dangerous piece of advice to give, right? Because we should only invest what we really think makes sense in a given moment. And it's, if Radius had collapsed, what I would be telling you is, boy, thank God I didn't invest more earlier.
That's true.
But I think people tend to spend an enormous amount of time thinking that they're saving money. And I definitely poured in time trying to save money. If I could look back, I would have bought back more of my time. I think a big part of my failure in building the business is how much of my personal life I used to subsidize what I was doing in business.
Yeah.
An enormous amount of time away from family, enormous amount of time away from friends. The purpose of building your own business is to live a better life, right? To have control over the way that you make income, have control over the projects and the work that you do. And so, I say I guess, favorite failure because I'm proud of what I accomplished. And I thought at the time all of those decisions made sense. And it's not that I think that spending, investing more money in the business up front was a better business decision, but it certainly would have been a better personal decision.
No, that's because I think a lot of entrepreneurs can be in that spot where they feel they have to just give their time. Oh, because that's sometimes the only resource you feel like you have to give is I don't have money right now, but I can just sink time and time. But you really do have to weigh out and counterbalance what is that worth.
Far and away, and we've seen a lot of businesses come up and come through Radius, still there, build for years. Far and away, the best businesses are run by people who protect and prioritize growth in their personal life. They take vacations, they spend time with kids, or if they don't have kids, they spend time with spouses or friends. They read, they have hobbies outside their work that they protect their time with. Those are far and away the most successful business leaders that I've seen, but not just within Radius, within the Erie community.
Yeah, and if that's not what you want, why are you trying to become an entrepreneur? Because if you just want to work your face off, you can do that in a normal corporate structure. You can find a job, you can put in all the work overtime. But if you really want to have control of your life, it's not in working 24/7, 365.
Absolutely.
It's being able to take those times. Now, obviously, in Erie, if you're looking for a community to join and to grow with, Radius is the spot. But hopefully the goal of this podcast is to grow it outside of Erie. If someone's listening and doesn't have a co-working space available, how can they also try and reap the benefits of a community in a situation like that?
Sure, there are lots of institutions people can join to build sort of more robust networks. In Erie, there's Young Erie Professionals. Well, there's a Young Professionals Association in most cities. In Erie, there's a chamber. That's a business association. Most cities have a chamber, a business association. Those are good for kind of making a first introduction, a first connection. But for solving that loneliness problem, really building a network of potential collaborators, people just have to be willing to invite others to join them. The way that we started Radius was not getting a physical space and opening it. The way that Bill and I, the first two guys talking about it, started Radius was posting on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook asking who wanted to join us for co-working, and we would meet up at cafes. The place I first physically met Bill was at a Panera. That was where we started talking. So, if you are working alone, you're not in Erie or, you're somewhere else. If you can't find a co-working space, just start saying, hey, is anybody else working alone in the region? I'm going to be at this cafe at this time. Go to that cafe, same time, post about it every day. Sure enough, someone's going to show up. And that, I think, is the big first step. Someone putting themselves out there. But man, once it's two, it's so much easier to find the third. Once you're three, the fourth just follows right on.
So kind of going back all the way to the beginning is, how did you meet Bill? Was that did you know each other beforehand and you were like, hey, this is a common problem? Or did you meet him through, hey, I'm going to Panera to work, someone come with me?
Honestly, saw a LinkedIn post that he had made where he asked, does anybody care about or know about co-working in Erie? And I'm like, oh, hey, I'm coming to Erie and I'm from a co-working space. He was the only guy talking about it. So we met, exactly like that through a social media post, and then, said, well, let's get together at Panera and kick these ideas around, see who each other are. And Bill has said, he knew things were going to work out because when I pulled up, my windows are down, I'm in my old Jeep Cherokee and a blasting EDM, and I get out with a satchel over my shoulder. I'm like, what's up? It's fun to crash through these initial social meetings and build those relationships.
For sure. So kind of wrapping up the podcast, I like to give each guest the opportunity to kind of speak about how to reach them, new things, kind of just plug whatever they want to plug at the end. So this is, how do people get in touch with you? We'll start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to reach me is through email. Sean, SEAN, at radiusco.work. radiusco.work. Go ahead and shoot me an email. But I'm on Twitter all the time at Sean Fedorko, SEANFEDORKO. I have a bit of a reputation in Erie for constantly tweeting. It's hard to take almost every picture anyone has of me is me tweeting. So you can find me on Twitter. But also, I encourage people, if you are interested in, checking out the co-working space, forming some relationships, talking to me or talking to others, go to our website, get a day pass, stop in for a day, say hi to me over the course of the day, introduce yourself to a couple other Radius members, see what kind of conversations get started.
Now, just out of a purely selfish question, what about Twitter do you find attractive?
The rapidity of the conversation.
Okay.
It was better when it was a little more chronological, but I like Twitter because it's fast. I can quickly search for information. I can follow, very specific posts from thought leaders or journalists or academics, businesses in the community. It's a great place for jokes. Twitter is far and away the funniest social media platform. So I have a lot of fun there.
You seem like that's a really big overarching thing in your life. Fun, jokes, have a good time.
Oh my God. If we're not having fun, what are we even doing?
Exactly. What's the point if you can't have fun about it? Any upcoming events you want to promote, say anything to? Obviously, Radius. People check that out.
There's a bunch of stuff we do. I encourage people to follow Radius's platform. So you don't need a co-working space, but we have a bunch of lunch and learns, and about maybe half of those are open to the public. You can register online. We just hosted one on crafting your LinkedIn profile specifically to get discovered by recruiters looking to hire people for remote positions. And one of our recruiters who works at Radius, her company recruits a ton of the people who end up working at Netflix.
Oh, wow.
So we've got some people who are really experienced in this. We had a class on incorporating small businesses. Well, you're going to be an LLC taxed as an S corp, partnership, sole proprietorship. What are the differences? We even have classes for people who are professionals. You're signing a contract. It has an anti-competition clause. Do you want to ask that that's changed to an anti-piracy clause? What's the difference? So we have a lot of content that we put out. We also run Startup Grind, which is a great place if you're part of the business and entrepreneurial community, and this is where you could be well established in business, or you could be relatively new. But if you want to talk about, commiserate with other peers in the business community, this is a good place to do it. And we run or host the Code Erie Software Developers Meetup every month. We host your own, what is now called Aspire.
Yes.
Erie Creatives Meetup is hosted at Radius frequently. And a big conference that'll be coming up, we've co-organized this with the Code Erie group every year, the Erie Day of Code, which is a one-day software developers conference held here in Erie. Typically attracts about 300 attendees, and we've had speakers from Amazon and Spotify and some other really big, really cool companies, some tech companies. So that's all stuff that'll be coming down the pipeline. Pay attention to our announcements and subscribe to our newsletter if you'd like to know more.
Awesome. Well, Sean, this was a great podcast. I look forward to editing this one. But yeah, thank you everybody for listening, and thank you, Sean, for being here.
Hey, thanks, Louis.
Now, that definitely was clarifying for me on finding out what it means to have a network and to collaborate with other people. I mean, so much of what I thought I knew has been brought to light and either been confirmed or reinvented with what collaboration means. So thank you guys so much for listening to Sean. You know how to get in contact with him. And if you're interested in a space at Radius, please do not hesitate to check it out. The reason why I really wanted to have this done so much is because I want this podcast to be a place for entrepreneurs to learn and be educated on business, as well as places like Radius for them to go physically and talk to people. So if you want to be able to go and talk to people in person, definitely check out Radius. If you also just want to talk on a podcast, I would love to have you. Please reach out. We'll set up a time to have an interview with you. Also, big shout out to Cam for the awesome studio. If you are looking to start a podcast, please do not hesitate to look into Cam. $60 a year, guys. You get all the equipment that I use for my podcast. Not an ad. Just love them so much. Gotta give them a shout out. Thank you guys for listening, and I look forward to listening to you in the comments.